realized the other day that my baby is 6 months old and or almost 6 months, and I haven't filmed my birth story yet. So we're gonna ignore the fact that it took me 6 months to make this video, and we're gonna make it right now. My birth story is kind of long, so I'm just going to literally jump straight into it. I'm gonna start at 36 weeks pregnant because this is where things kind of changed for me. If you don't know, my pregnancy was so hard. I was sick for almost the entire 40 weeks. I had a couple complications, a few scary things that happened. One of them being that I got COVID at 23 weeks pregnant, and or 22 weeks pregnant. It lasted 2 weeks till about 24 weeks. It was brutal. I was already nauseous for like almost the whole pregnancy and just feeling like garbage kind of 24/7, and then getting COVID on top of it was terrible. Come to 36 weeks pregnant, I was so done being pregnant. I was tired of feeling like garbage, of being sick all the time, being nauseous all the time. So I was like ready to not be pregnant anymore. My whole pregnancy, I wanted to do a natural birth. I preferred to do a birth in my home, but I decided to go for a natural birth in the hospital so that way I was in the hands of medical professionals in case anything went wrong. I kind of wanted to gauge how my body was going to respond to labor and birth before I decided to do a birth in the home. So I planned on doing a natural birth, no pain medications. I wanted to use the tubs that they had there. 36 weeks pregnant, my belly dropped a lot. So I went in for my 36-week checkup. I was like, I don't know if I should be concerned. Like, my belly dropped a lot. I'm ready to not be pregnant anymore, but I think this is too early. So my doctor kind of felt around, and she was like, she hasn't dropped. She moved to transverse. This was obviously shocking. By this point, they're supposed to be head down in that position, and typically when a baby goes transverse this late in the game, they actually are more prone to be breech at that point. I was like, don't want to breech, baby, do not want to have a C-section, so how do I flip her around? So I went home and was immediately trying all of these things. I made a few videos on my story, on my Instagram story, about this time period. I was having contractions, like a lot, and they were really painful contractions, and I was like, I'm going into labor. It turns out later, when I found out, that the contractions were real contractions, but because she was transverse in my pelvic bowl, the contractions were essentially pushing on my cervix with no progression. I already had SPD, which is symphysis pubis disorder. It's where your pubic bone pulls apart in pregnancy. It is so painful. And these contractions were essentially making my SPD worse and worse and worse. And so it was getting to the point where like I was having trouble walking, especially up and down stairs. I was having a hard time getting in and out of bed. Sitting hurt, like just anything was just uncomfortable. She finally flipped and she went head down, and I felt it. I definitely felt it. I was getting out of the shower actually, and put one leg over the side of the tub, and she slipped into place, and it was so painful. I thought my water broke. I was like, she was gonna drop out of me. It was so painful. I had scheduled an induction because I was like, I don't know what to do. I can't do a natural birth. Like, if I'm already in this much pain and I'm not even in labor, like I can't do it. So I scheduled an induction for March 27th. I prayed about it and I felt really good about it. And so we decided to go forward with it. So come March 27th, pulled up to the hospital at like 2:30 p.m. My induction was scheduled for 3. They pulled me back and did a check on me. I was 0.5 centimeter dilated. I was like, cool. All of these contractions that I've been feeling for the past 4 weeks that were super painful got me to 0.5 centimeter. Like, I thought I was gonna be at least like 1 or 2, but whatever, we'll take it. They started me on something called Cervidil. Cervidil is this little paper tab that has medicine on it that basically softens your cervix and gets it ready for dilation. It's got like a long string that comes out. So they slip the paper tab into your cervix, and then string hangs out the bottom, kind of like a tampon. So they put that in at 4 p.m. and they were like, okay, this comes out in 12 hours, so we'll come check on you, or we'll come pull it out in 12 hours at 4 a.m.
So I got my Cervidil put in. There's Dylan. We're watching SpongeBob. And now we just wait 12 hours. I got it put in at like almost 4 p.m. So they won't come back and pull that out until 4 a.m. And then we'll see where I'm at by then. I could go into labor all by myself.
All by yourself.
And not need Pitocin. Or I will have to start Pitocin. And in that case, I will get an epidural. So that's where we're at.
At about 7 or 8 p.m., so I'd had it in for 3 or 4 hours, I started having contractions. They weren't super painful, but they definitely were uncomfortable. And I was like, this is great. Like, I'm gonna make progress. I wouldn't start Pitocin until I was 4 centimeters dilated. They checked me every couple hours at around like 1 a.m. I was in so much pain. Like, I could not sleep. The contractions were so bad. Dylan was sleeping. I told him to sleep because I was like, if anybody is gonna get sleep, I want it to be you so that you can help me. I will need help, especially in labor, giving birth, and then with the baby afterwards. I had asked Dylan to sleep, and I was okay going through this first part by myself so that I would have him available for the rest of my labor. At 1 a.m. they came in and I was like, I'm in so much pain. And I was sitting on the ball on the side of the bed, just kind of like rocking through my contractions. They were like, well, why don't we go ahead and check you and see where you're at? Maybe you're further along than we think. Nurse came in and tried to check me and she could not find my cervix for the life of her. She tried for like 3 minutes and I was in so much pain that I was like, this isn't working. This hurts so bad. I can't do this. She was like, let me go get another nurse. So she grabbed another nurse. She came in. That second nurse tried to check me. Couldn't find my cervix. Cervical checks they can be. They're not really painful for everybody, but for me, it was so painful. So they got a third nurse. The third nurse came in, checked me, and it took her a couple minutes, but then she found my cervix very high and in the very back. And she was like, you're half a centimeter. I was like, you've got to be kidding me. I'm not half a centimeter. You did that wrong. You did that wrong. I have been having contractions. They've been painful. They've been consistent. And I haven't progressed a single bit. I started to cry, of course. I was so upset. And they were like, do you want an epidural? Because we will give you an epidural right now. No, I don't want an epidural right now. Like, I'm in the very beginning of my labor. I want to at least make it to a certain point before I get the epidural. So they were like, okay, well, we'll leave the Cervidil in for another 3 hours and then we'll come take it out and assess you. So they left it until 4 a.m., came and checked me again. I was half a centimeter. Dude, I'm so done. So then they gave me this pill called Cytotec, and it's like this little rice grain pill you stick on the inside of your cheek. You don't chew it, you don't swallow it, it needs to dissolve. So they gave me twice the dose, which means they gave me 4 pills. So 2 in one side, 2 in the other. They came back in at 8 a.m. Again, going through contractions this whole time and was super in pain. So they checked me at 8 a.m. and I was a centimeter, which I was a little bit happy about. But again, like, I was super discouraged by this point because I had been at the hospital now for like 16 hours. I had been in pain for around 12 of those 16 hours. Like, I was so discouraged. They were like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. You are a centimeter, so we can get a Foley bulb in your cervix, which is this balloon that they put in there and then they expand it and it dilates and effaces you. I was 50% effaced by this point and 1 centimeter dilated. So I was like, okay, before you put the balloon in, I want the epidural. My experience was traumatizing. I'm not even gonna lie. I was terrified to get the epidural. If you talked to me at all about the epidural prior to going to the hospital, like, I would almost like cry about it because I was so scared. And I don't care that you can't see the epidural needle because it goes in your back. I can feel it. She started to push it in and would hit the left side. So she told me, like, if I was feeling any pain. So I was like, left side. So she moved it and hit the right side. I was like, right side. And it does not feel good. It does not feel good, by the way. So she started going faster, as if like she got like this clear pathway, so she was able to do it faster. Then she struck a nerve, and it made me jump and like scream out because it hurt so bad. And I just started crying. She was like, you can't jump. And I was like, I'm sorry. I actually couldn't control that reaction. You hit a nerve in my back and it made me like, yeah. Either way, I got the epidural. I finally started to feel better about 20 minutes later. So they put the Foley bulb in me. When you are 5 centimeters, it will like basically fall out. They put me in a position where I was laying on my side and had one leg up. They called it a chicken wing.
Little chicken wing. You're a high chicken wing.
I'm a hot chicken wing.
High.
Oh, I am hot.
Just a little bit.
Dude.
You're cute though.
And then they would rotate me an hour, hour and a half later to the other side. I was kind of rotating between this for about 6 hours. I slept for quite a bit of that because I was so tired from not sleeping. And they came in and checked me, I think at like 2-ish. As soon as I like laid down for them to do my cervical check, the Foley bulb basically just like fell out. They were like, you're 5 centimeters. This is great. I was not feeling discouraged anymore. I was like, I can do this. Like, we're gonna have a baby soon. Like, okay, well, we're gonna give you Pitocin now. So they put my Pitocin on. They put it at a pretty high level because I had been in labor for so long already. I was eating my popsicles, my Jello. As soon as I got the Pitocin, about 30 minutes later, I started having these nausea bouts where I would just like be totally fine. And then all of a sudden it was like, I have to throw up right this second. And if you don't give me a bag right now, I'm going to throw up everywhere. Like the first time that it happened, it took me by surprise because I like wasn't nauseous at all. And then it was like, you have to throw up. Like I held out my hand, like basically just like, give me a bag. And then they would come like every like 10 minutes. So I was throwing up quite a bit, but like I didn't feel bad. I would just feel nauseous for like the 15 seconds that I would like throw up for, and then I was totally fine after that. Other thing too is that there's different positions in labor to be put in so that you can dilate better. And one of them is called the throne position or the princess position. And it's where you're sitting up and your legs are splayed open like this over like a peanut ball to help with gravity to push the baby down. So every time they would try to sit me up into the throne position, my blood pressure would drop. And at one point it got down to like 75 over 50 or something like that. I didn't pass out, but my vision went away entirely. They couldn't sit me up at all. I had to be laying down the entire time after I got this epidural. I still don't really understand why that happened to me. I know that some people have an adverse reaction to an epidural, and maybe that's what was going on. I'm not really sure. But every time my blood pressure would drop, the baby's blood pressure would drop as well. So they just kept me laying down. This is where the timeline gets foggy. I think they came and checked me around 6 p.m. and I was barely at a 7. They were like, okay, you're making progress. It's a little slow. We're gonna up your Pitocin. So transition is the most intense and painful part of labor. I was like, great, I have an epidural. I'm not gonna feel it. Except I hit 7 centimeters and I started feeling a lot of pressure. I was like, I feel a lot of pressure. Is that normal? And they were like, yes, you should feel pressure with an epidural, but you should not feel pain. Essentially, like you want to feel the pressure so that you know when to push. I got an epidural so I wouldn't have any pain. And keep in mind, like I'm on a high dose of Pitocin too, and Pitocin amplifies pain in labor. It makes it 10 times worse. So 8 p.m., they checked me. I was 8 centimeters. I was feeling it. Like I was feeling so much pressure. It was getting pretty intense. Like 20 minutes after they came in and checked me, the pain started. And this is where my epidural stopped working. Again, on Pitocin, high dose of Pitocin. I kept hitting the button on my epidural to get more medicine and wasn't helping. I was holding onto the hospital bed and just like moaning and groaning through my contractions. were so painful. I went through that for an hour and a half. So we hit about 10 p.m. They checked me and I was 9.5. So again, the contractions were so painful and they were getting more painful. And they were like, when you feel like you need to poop, you let us know. 5 minutes later, it was about 5 minutes later, I felt like I needed to poop. I was like, where's the nurse? She came in, checked me, and she was like, you're still at a 9.5. And I was like, that's not possible because this baby is coming out of me. I was in so much pain. I was in so much pain. And the pressure was like, it was unlike anything I've ever felt before. I was like, I need to start pushing. I need to push right now. It was like, let's wait for like 30 minutes because the doctor is in a delivery right now. So she won't be able to come deliver your baby for a little bit. So try to hold off for another 30 minutes. Maybe we can get you to completion. How am I not complete? How am I not 10 centimeters? Like, this baby is going to fall out of me. So I had to lay there for, it was about 15 minutes that I laid there, like almost screaming through my contractions, because that was the only thing that felt good, was just like basically like this loud moaning, screaming type thing. The nurse came back in and I was like, I have to start pushing. Whether you're in here or not, I'm going to push. She was like, okay, well, let's do some practice pushes and the doctor will be here soon. Pushing was actually harder than I thought it was going to be. I thought that I was like gonna be totally fine and figure it out immediately. And there are a bunch of people that I heard that was like, it was just like second nature, how to push. And I only pushed like, 3 times and my baby came out. That was not the case for me. I pushed for an hour and 15 minutes. 30 minutes into pushing, I was falling asleep between pushes because I was so exhausted. I was on my back, my legs were in the stirrups, and there were little handles right next to my legs that I would hold onto and then pull myself forward to kind of curl into a ball to push the baby out better. I will say the pain and the pressure was drastically decreased while I was pushing. And then the doctor came in and she was like, okay, like, let's get this baby out. I was like, hallelujah, like, take your time. Every time I would push, the baby would come out a little bit, and then when I would stop pushing, she would go back in a little bit. Dylan is the one that saw this and like knows all this stuff and told me later, because I had no idea what was going on. I was just trying to push baby out. Dylan said that the doctor took her hands and like pushed like this around baby's head and would hold her hands there when I wasn't pushing anymore so that the baby wouldn't retract back into the birth canal. And then she would use her finger and go all the way around, like just constantly to help me from tearing, to help stretch me better. And things started progressing a lot better at this point. I did push for another 45 minutes, but like I was making a lot more progress than I was before, so I don't even want to think about how long I would be pushing if she wasn't doing this little maneuver. I lost sense of time entirely at this point, but I want to say it was the last like 20 minutes of pushing. She started crowning. I've heard people talk about the Ring of Fire before. I was not prepared for what the Ring of Fire was going to feel like. That was the most pain I've ever been in my entire life. Like movie scenes of birth with like women screaming their head off. That was me. I was like, I'm tearing, I'm ripping, like, get this baby out of me. I can't do this anymore. And it was just constant pain at this point. There was no relief. No relief between contractions or pushes. No relief when I would lay back or go forward when I was pushing. Like, no relief. It was constant pain. This is it. I'm gonna die. I genuinely was like, this is how I die, is giving birth to my child. I could not understand what people were saying to me. I was not paying attention to anything else except for getting this baby out. I had been falling asleep in between pushes before, but now I had gotten this like adrenaline boost from all the pain and like fight or flight, like primal instincts. And so now I'm like wide awake, not able to comprehend what's going on, but I was fully awake and like screaming my head off. She was crowning, and then finally I got the head all the way out. The only way that I can describe that feeling is like you pop a balloon. Like you have all this pressure from the balloon blowing up, blowing up, blowing up, and then it pops and there's no more pressure. And it felt amazing. It felt so good to have her head out and not be dealing with that ring of fire anymore. Relief just all over my body. Dylan said that she was just kind of like in that in between where her head is out, her eyes are closed, she's not moving or anything like that. She's not breathing yet because she's not outside of the womb. She's just like sitting there, and then the rest of her is still in the birth canal, which is so wild to think about. The next contraction, like 3 minutes later, I barely had to push and she shot straight out. The rest of her, just all of her came out. And the doctor grabbed her, suctioned her out, and then they flipped her over and put her on my chest. Instant sobbing. All this pain that I just went through, and like I finally have my baby. The pictures from that time definitely showcase like how I was feeling, having all that pain gone and just like this instant dopamine rush of like, I have a baby. Like I pushed this thing out. I grew this thing and it was awful and terrible, but like she's here. It was so surreal, so surreal. And all I could do after I pushed her out was just vocally, like out loud, just thank God and just tell him how grateful I was that I was able to do this with his help. So after that, postpartum was pretty easy for me actually, other than the major sleep deprivation in the beginning. That was really rough. I didn't tear at all because my doctor was so amazing. So I had a pretty easy recovery. Being a mom is so fun. It's so hard, but very worth it. I am happy about the way that my birth went, even though it wasn't exactly like I always thought it would be. It still was perfect and turned out amazing. That is my birth story. A little bit long, but I am just grateful for my nurses, my doctor, my family, especially my husband. Like he was so helpful throughout the whole thing. He stayed by my side the whole time. It just really was honestly a very spiritual experience, very empowering experience. Knowing that like I did that, my body did that. My body can do that. I hope it was entertaining. I'm sorry that it took me 6 months to get this video filmed, but I got it out there now. So thank you for watching. Love you. Goodbye.